Big Ten Championship presented by Discover. The new kickoff pregame will start off on site from Indianapolis. The Big Ten Championship game at noon Eastern, only on Fox.
Oh, hey, Greg.
How's it going, John?
Good.
Good. Good to hear. So how was your weekend so far?
Good. I just drove home from SAG today, so I was out there for a couple weeks. I felt like spring today.
Yeah, it was actually nice. We were out playing platform tennis a couple hours ago. It's gorgeous. It's fantastic. But I'm spending most of my time up in New Haven, so it's about the same weather, of course. You know, it's only a couple hours away.
Right. Hang on 1 second.
Sure.
All right, so we have this call with them tomorrow, right?
Yep. Yeah, 9:30.
Okay.
And you see the stuff I sent you, the adjustments and stuff?
Yeah, I did. I want to make sure I have this in my phone for tomorrow. Yeah, see, good. Hang on. I didn't even put it in my phone for tomorrow. It's at 9:30, you said?
Yeah. It'll be on my this Zoom, so it's no issue there.
Right. Yeah, hey, we talked about this once before, but like you sent me that message thread and then you sent a Word document and stuff, which was cool. But I think we need to keep things in email that get into detail so that we have like an audit trail.
Yeah,
There's no way to really.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll put all this stuff into a Word doc.
Yeah, I mean, you sent the one Word doc there, which was good, but I think just for like like a paper trail and stuff, and especially as we start to get into some more of the stuff that has legal ramifications, like if we're talking about parental approval or privacy policies and anything like that, I think, if we ever have an issue, we need to be able to reproduce the communications to show that we thought about that, like especially like stuff that's related to the GDPR in Europe,
Yeah.
So in any case, I mean, we're good for now, but we really, like, I don't mind talking by text, but if we have decisions or, thought processes or, outlining our plans and strategies, I think we need to keep that in email.
Yeah, I definitely see the need for that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so you wanted to touch base before this meeting to go through their questions, right?
Yeah, basically just go through the stuff that I had written and that development notes thing and make sure that we're on the same page when they start questioning things. Wait, hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a sec.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
So yeah, I'm gonna copy the stuff that I just wrote today and put it on a Word doc so we have it on the file. I'll put it into the thing there on Slack. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I wanted to clarify with those guys. So it was good that I had a chance to spend time with them and like talk them off the ledge. So it seemed like they're doing what they do as developers. I started pushing back as far as scope goes.
Yeah, I didn't completely read through all of their stuff, but they answered some of their own questions, and like I agreed on a few of the points and stuff like that. Um, I thought I downloaded your document and I didn't. Hang on a second. See, now I gotta find that.
I can't believe it's only 2 weeks till Christmas.
Yeah, right.
It's like ridiculous.
All right. I thought I had this on my computer already. Hang on. Sorry about that, Greg. Okay, I have your document open in front of me for now.
Okay, good.
The user types, I'm in agreement with the user types. The groups that have like the trainers and the recruiters and stuff, yes, they'll have a separate app. But I think it's important to identify those roles now so that we can understand whether or not they have different screens in the, the website and the basic MVP app that we're putting out. And I think you're right. I think you did scare them a little, or we did scare them a little bit with the number of them. And that was why at the end of our call, I tried to ease them down a little bit by saying that, not all of them are going to require different screens, et cetera.
Right.
And I think there's still some clarification as to exactly how many different screens we're going to have, and we can flush through that with them tomorrow.
I think
see,
one
I'm
thing we
reading what
haven't built
else
yet
was in your
that
note.
here we're going to need is a group, a multi-group dashboard for the administrator of a league and multi-facility dashboard for the manager of like a rec center with 12 areas, where they can set up schedules for each one of the areas and possibly invite the teams and groups or whatever is supposed to be in there, where the individual participants are supposed to be in it. Those are 2 screens we haven't yet developed, but contemplated but not developed. Because in the trainer app, in the athletic trainer and the class trainer app, we went through all that. We discussed what the apps have to do. And I think the only difference is that you and I both told them individually and in our conversations that yes, they'll be in apps, but most, it'll be an easier look if a facilities or an athletic trainer or a class trainer, we're looking at it at a actual computer or a pad rather than an app. So we both went through that with them. It's just, if they were listening and if they understood that was part of the original specs.
Well, and they showed us a wireframe.
Those wireframes suck, by the way. I wasn't
Well,
impressed at all with them.
they're really supposed to be. They're intended to be a skeleton of what what kind of stuff is on the screen and kind of how it will lay out. It has nothing to do with design. Um, what I think is that we'll have, I mean, our vision is that the screen is going to look much different on mobile and desktop. And you can take that single wireframe and make it, have a desktop design and a mobile design that's still based around that wireframe. But I
Right.
think that they're going to be different enough that they're really going to have multiple wireframes. And that's what we have to come up with. In other words, the anonymous user, like one of the things you said is that we don't want them to see ambassador content, right?
Right. They have to know that it's
Um,
there and see the first paragraph or whatever the ambassador writes, but that's got to be it.
Right. So, the real question is, does that really belong in the wireframe or not? And it may not, because you can display in the wireframe a section on a screen that's going to be for the ambassador content.
Right. Exactly.
And how much of the content is displayed is then driven in your design and your spec. So the
Right.
wireframe could apply to both an anonymous user or not. So, one of the things that we'll get to eventually, and I don't know if we'll get to it tomorrow, but we're going to have to talk through about what kind of things, ultimately, once we get through the user types, we're going to have to talk about which ones get different things on their screens. How different are those things? And does that drive a different wireframe for different roles? Okay,
Right.
for the same screen. That's number one. Number two, the wireframe that they did show us, I don't think really encompassed all of the content and stuff that we expected. Like, I thought the video, they just showed kind of one video. They didn't have like a list of upcoming videos or other videos to choose from. It was almost like it wasn't even a video on the page. Like, they'd click it and they expected it to take you to a page with videos on it or something.
Right.
So I'm not sure exactly how they did, are going to deal with that. But I think for the most part, our user roles are kind of set. We understand what we want. And it's a matter of, communicating that to them, and making sure that they understand what we need so that the wireframes and the design elements come back right. Like, Krishna is going to have to know what we're looking for in regards to what content actually goes on for which roles.
Right.
So she can lay out the pages. If we're absolutely not showing certain things to certain people, which is conceivable, then that's one thing. If it's a matter of just rearranging stuff for a different type of user, and the example I always use is that, an athlete wants to see certain things first, whereas a trainer or a coach might want to see something different at the top of their screen. But those variations would require like different kinds of designs, possibly even different wireframes. It depends how detailed they go in their wireframe. Like, if they're just showing content blocks all over, then it's just a matter of us saying, okay, well, for this role, this goes in the top content block, this goes in the lower corner here, this goes in the lower corner here.
That's how we
The
originally
wireframes
built it,
don't
actually.
necessarily. Yeah, I mean, the wireframes don't necessarily identify or vary based on the content. It shows you a base template for a page,
Right.
basically, is what you have. So that's kind of what I'll have to be prepared to discuss with them and to flush out for them
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I didn't like the way they combined the nav bars. And that was something that I worked really hard on trying to define what the different nav bars do. Like, the top nav bar really is, what did I come here onto the site to do? There's a wellness portal, the parental portal, the home, the UB universe. That's all in the top part. And the second nav bar really is, okay, I'm here at this page. This is the capabilities that I have in front of me to do to get to something that I really can use. So I don't think, I think
Yeah,
it's not lost. And I want to try to do
yeah.
that.
Although if you, they're probably, I mean, the site's going to be a responsive site. So the concept is that you really have, I mean, normally you only have kind of one action menu. I'm not sure that things like the UB Universe and the parental portal and stuff are necessarily part of the menu. Like, even though you call it like a top menu, those are actually different sections of the site, if you will, or
Yeah, tool
tabs.
sets. They're different tool sets. They are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, if we don't think that they're integrating that right, that's just a matter of, talking that through with them till they get what we want.
Right.
There's a lot of sites that will have a main menu that'll open up, but then they have like a couple of links. A lot of times you see them in the top right corner.
Yeah. Or just
to
bars.
get into your account.
Yeah.
And your profile. Okay, so there's some static links that are always going to be there that don't change based on the context of the page.
Right.
So I believe that they're looking at the menu as being, driven by the page context of where you are in the site.
Right.
Right. Which is what you want. So whether the other item, I mean, there's a few mobile apps that kind of do have two sets of menus, and they work differently. Okay, like I can think of my banking apps. Number one.
Yeah.
If I go into an investing tab, or if I go into a, pay my bills tab or something, the menu functions change, but yet there's kind of another menu that drills me back to, other banking functions.
Yeah, down at the bottom we'll say like transfer and Zelle and
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we're good there. I didn't really see much more feedback on the opt-out stuff. Moving on from roles and wireframes.
Yeah, I
didn't see much more.
Yeah, you saw what they wrote at the end of their last thing, where they try to say it's saved for another phase.
Yeah, I think it depends on the complexity, but we have to be able to do some sort of opt-outs now. So if you maintain like a single opt-out, let's say, people are going to sign up, they're going to get too many emails, they're going to opt out and not get them, and it's going to be hard to get them back, because you can't target them with a communication that says we've refined our unsubscribe preferences and things, go back in and sign up, because not many people will. So I have been giving some thought to how we can come up with a somewhat easy way to do an opt-out, and that is that ultimately every page that I'm on, every screen that I'm on, or group that I join, I should have the ability at least to toggle each group on or off.
Right, that's got to show up in your profile, in one of your profile pages.
Yeah, and if I belong to 45 groups, I'm going to have 45 check boxes there for each of the groups. This is opt into this, opt out of that, and a duration, a email duration, like whatever.
Yeah, how many times, do you want to see it real time or daily or weekly or monthly or that kind of thing? Or never?
Yeah, see, I think the future scope, I mean, it sounds like what they're trying to build in now is that when I join a group, I have specific group settings.
And they
So
do.
if I
Actually, the
go
way it's built
to,
that it does have group settings. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, okay, yes, that the way we get down from 11 user roles to 6 or 7 is by doing this thing here where, yeah, USA Florida is a good one. You have the multi-layer group here, multi-group league, and that allows you to have, like, USA Florida has different tennis clubs in it. So the multi-group league, when you go there, when you click the tab display, you have Ubers and subs. So Uber would be the USTA. Now I could just go to a group and go USTA Players Portal. And that would show up there. And because it's built in Ruby on Rails, I have to click the change thing, which sort of sucks. But once we get to
right.
JavaScript, that'll happen easily. So now the USTA Players Portal in there. And then the subs, this is USA Florida. So the sub would be, what is it called? I forget what the hell it was. Oh shit, I forget it. But there's a tennis club that I have in here that was meant to be in there. Someone's tennis center. What the hell was it? Yeah, here, Arthur Allen Tennis Center. So now I have a Uber and a sub. Uber takes you out to the larger group, and the sub is, so Uber is, you see, USTA, and the sub is Arthur Allen Tennis Center. So this is really built to do that, to be a league and then have teams or other clubs within it. And then have it go out to the USTA, the national. So
Yeah, so it would, the question then is, if I want to opt out of stuff from USTA Florida,
right,
and I go to the group,
right.
and I go to the group settings there, does that cascade down to each of the subgroups?
It should just take you out
Right.
to whichever thing you're canceling or unsubscribing to. That's the only one that it should unsubscribe. And then if they see something from Arthur Allen Tennis Center, they can go, I don't want that either, and opt out of that. So
now, if I join USTA Florida, I'm not automatically joined to the Arthur Allen Tennis Center,
nope,
right?
Nope.
Okay.
No,
Okay, so
you're group by
work.
group on the way down. But you
So I mean, I think I can agree.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, so I think I can agree to some of that opt-out stuff being future. Let me go back to their screen. Hold on.
Right, their screen. Hold on.
I want to pull up their doc again. But the question, I guess, that you need to come to terms with is, that's kind of a poor user experience, right? Because I have to go to all these different pages to do that. And
okay, so
I'm going to join.
Our first lump of real people is going to happen hopefully March, April, right? That's when we start getting larger numbers of people hitting the site once we launch the new one. So I would think that by then we'd have better, that would actually be in time for phase 2 if we can't get into phase 1. I'm trying to like make sure that we're we have them concentrating on the right things now and spending our money as wisely as possible for now. I think the opt-outs could easily happen April, May, and not hurt anybody's user experience.
Okay.
Although I want everything in
Yeah, I can't
obviously
really.
this build. If we have to cut things down, I think the opt-out would be, you know, among the ones that I wouldn't worry about in this build.
Okay.
As far as the international thing, when I did the research, that the EU basically has the same, if not more lenient restrictions than the US COPPA laws. So the thing that the link that I put up basically says, hey, if you're covering COPPA, you're covered in the EU. And
Okay.
you know, I was feeling good about that. I'm going to talk to our lawyers this week about that and make sure that they agree with that. But that's the way I
Yeah,
got it
let's,
from
you know what, before you have that conversation with them, there's a couple other things that we should probably talk about offline. I'm not prepared to discuss them right now, but
Okay.
We probably need to work on a privacy policy
Absolutely.
and terms and conditions.
Did you read the
Terms and conditions,
have?
well, I think you have that now, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we have TNC.
that may change. It's probably a few years old. It doesn't include mobile apps, you know, the fact that we have mobile apps, et cetera. And the privacy policy, because this is going to be, you know, a European site, the privacy policy has to be a little bit more specific.
Right.
I think, especially in dealing with cookies. And I think we have to, I don't know how many times you see it as you browse the web, but you now start to see little pop-up messages as soon as you visit a site that says, this is how we use cookies.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to accept it
All the
or set
time.
your preferences.
Yeah.
You know, we need to make sure that that stuff is incorporated into the SRS so that they can build that cookie management.
Right.
And especially given that you want to be able, you know, to track how many times an anonymous user has come to the site, which is never reliable.
Sure.
You know, because people use private browsing, things like that prevent you from saving code.
Of course.
And stuff like that. So that does become unreliable. And I wouldn't, you know, if it comes down to, like, that's an example of something that if it comes down to having to shave things off, we can incorporate some of that later, because we're not going to have, I think, in the first pass, the ability to dynamically track someone's usage of the site and say, well, you've used it now, you've seen, you know, 20 pages, it's time for you to sign up. You know, to me, that could be something we do a little bit in the future in order to get more bang for the buck up front in the first version. But there are, back to the point where if you're going to engage with the lawyer to discuss some of those, we probably should try to come up with whether or not we need a new privacy policy, which I think we do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think we need to address the cookies and how we're going to be using the cookies. And while we may have some very specific business requirements for using cookies, the developers may be using cookies for some of their own things.
And we should ask them if they have something like that already in place. I'm sure they do, because they have a bunch of sites they're using right now. I'm sure that they've done something like that. So it's probably not hard to replicate. But we need to get the language correct. We need to check the terms and conditions and see if any of that has changed. You know, the content of what you have now has changed, and you could probably engage the lawyer in one shot to look at all of those things together
and provide feedback. And I can give you some samples of some more modern privacy policies.
Yeah.
You can certainly go to plenty of sites on your own and look at their privacy policies, and see what's out there.
I probably should go right to like Facebook or somebody like that.
Well, I don't know that Facebook would be where I would go to look for that, but nevertheless, you can, Google might be a good place to look at their privacy policy.
Yeah, good idea.
Facebook is kind of a closed system. You have a member, and just by virtue of signing up, you're subject to whatever terms and conditions they foist on you.
Yeah,
Google's an open platform, right?
I'm sure you saw the checkbox for that.
Yeah. So we can certainly be in a better position to go to the lawyers and say, look, this is what we have right now. This is what our intent is to do with children when we actually know the process. When we know exactly what's going to happen. Here's the email that goes out. This is what the email says to the child. This is what the email says to the parent, and include those things. So we have to get some of the content, and that'll be, because the lawyers are going to need that stuff before they can really give you any hard sound advice.
Sure. Right. Okay. So I'll talk to our lawyers tomorrow and see if try to get an appointment with them so I can ask that question.
Yeah.
And I'll also get Google's thing and read that, make sure it makes sense. Because you're right, that would be other people's content. That'd be a lot more appropriate rather than for Facebook.
Yeah. And when you get into the details of the cookies, we're going to have to find out from the developers. They may use cookies to do some internal things on their own.
Right.
Like if you have kind of a wizard process, which might be your profile. If you think of it kind of as a wizard, that the site's going to take you through this wizard to do your profile.
Right.
They may use cookies to kind of save things until the member is completely done with the profile or whatever. So we have to understand what they're going to use them for on a technical side, in addition to what we want to use them for, from like a marketing or membership side.
Yeah. That'd be a good question for tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, we can raise that. I think for tomorrow morning, the goal is to clarify those user roles, get them through that, come to an agreement on what we do with the opt-out stuff and how that plays out, and the onboarding process.
Now, what about the onboarding? Tell me about that.
Well, the onboarding process, it is what it is. And, pull up their sheet again. Pull up their list of questions again.
Yeah, I was just there. Hold on. Oops. All right.
Their comments in number 2. Yeah, so I had kind of flushed out that onboard process after we had spoke to them, and that was what I posted in Slack, was the updated one.
Right.
And that is the comment he says, this is in the document I sent. That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
As far as the session end I do get that it's a stateless session, so there isn't really a session end. And what they're telling us is that, and I agree with them, is that if the user doesn't hit the logout button actively, regularly, or if you can't count on that as being a reliable tool, then the welcome email has to be sent once they finish those screens.
Why do you have to wait until it ends? I would think that as soon as they,
because what I had initially thought we could do was, if I come in and I verify my email, I put in the mandatory profile data, and when I do that, if you send the email, then you know what my favorite sport is, and that's it. And you know if I'm an athlete or a pro or a coach or a parent or whatever, because I told you that as well. But if we waited, you could have that person fill out the rest of their profile, and now they're in 30 groups.
Right.
You'd have a much better idea of suggesting things in that welcome email. Say, oh, this is what we know about you.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
You know, if that email, and if that email says, make sure you fill out your profile completely, you know, we encourage them to do that. One of the ideas was, you say, well, your profile is only, you know, 40% complete.
Right.
Well, if you send it out, as soon as you collect the mandatory data, their profile is only like 2% complete.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good point.
So you're not going to be able to leverage that aspect in the welcome email. So it just changes. If you send it as soon as they submit that mandatory data, their name, their date of birth, and stuff like that, you know a little bit about them. So you can't really get too personal in that email.
Right.
You don't know what their favorite teams are, what other groups they joined, or things like that. You know, that was the idea. If we can't do it right away, then that's fine.
That's a good point. Good point.
I think in the future, what we could do is, and this is a way to do it without having like the state of a user. When you have a stateless application, is instead of sending a welcome email as soon as they submit that stuff to us, is we send a welcome email. We have like a background process that runs every 4 hours. And it says, who are the new signups?
Right.
You know, let's send them the welcome email. And at that point, a couple hours later, maybe you do have some people who have filled out more of their profile or joined more groups, and you can get more detailed.
Right.
But to extract that data from the database and craft your content around that is a complicated process on its own.
It makes it more complicated. Yeah, you're right. I see that.
Right. So because you have to have language that accommodates all these different variables now. But that is something that in the future we could potentially do, is where we do batch email that does some of that analysis of their profile. And we could send an email that 4 hours later or 2 hours later, maybe they have 10% of the profile and just instead of just 2%, something like that.
Right.
And I think it gives more incentive to the user. The parental approval, if based on what you say and what the lawyers say, if that doesn't change anything, and our process that we use in the US for parental approval is valid in the EU, then we don't have an issue with that. This is for item number 3.
Right.
Okay. The item 4, custom email templates. I mean, I think that's like a stupid piece of feedback to begin with, because if we spec out our site and we have 4 different types of emails that we send,
Right.
like your verification email, the welcome email, like that, like we need those. So I don't know how they can sit and say, well, those are kind of out of scope or something now. I mean, I just like,
Yeah.
to me, it's no different than programming a page. You have an email template that you inject somebody's first and last name into, and maybe some other profile data or something, and that's it, and you send it. So it's not a complicated process whether you have 4 or 1. Yes, the email has to have some kind of a design, but you can have one email template, one design, and the
Right.
content is different.
Right.
You know, where the words and the text in the email are different. So that's more like semantics. You know what I'm saying, of how you describe it. So I don't particularly like their response, and we can address that with them tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It started getting a little picky.
Number 5, like, I'm not sure what the difference is between admin and super admin.
Well, the admins, there's going to be like a group admin and like an athletic trainer watching over the trainers in their training room, and the facilities manager watching over the facilities. So those are like admins because they're managers of groups. But super admins are us, people who work in the site on the inside.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I see that as like
That's
different. But again, I think that it's just a matter of toggling off yes and no. This is what this person has access to.
Right. Right.
But the
Okay.
tool, I think, is a multi-level tool that we do need that we don't have yet, that allows that facilities manager to watch over 10 different areas and make 10 different schedules, and then charge when they have to charge those constituents. But I don't see that, outside of the athletic trainer, the facilities manager, and the class trainer, and probably the league administrator, because they want to be able to charge the kids and the parents for being in the league. But other than that, I don't see those. Those are places that are necessary. Those are really just adjustment of the same tool. But super admin is you, me, and whoever else is involved with the site.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it had something to do with, okay, we're going to have certain admins that might be some of us, and then super admins, which might be like me and you or something. Like, I thought we were going to have different level of site admins.
We could definitely do that too. We can just,
that's what it was.
It'd be nice if we could toggle off. Like, we don't need to have Leslie see, our profits on ads or whatever.
Right. Right.
Not to say anything bad about Leslie, but that level, the level under you and me and maybe Kelly as COO.
Right. In the rest of their list, number 6, I don't know why they said this, because we knew that, we have one basic database and user model, and that's fine.
That did make sense.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why that was put in there. The categories of emails, now this kind of contradicts what they were just saying about different email templates.
Right.
So maybe this goes to what I was saying, where you can have one email template where the content just varies, and that's what they're talking about, categories. So, as we go through the SRS and we discuss it, we'll say, we need this verification email, we need this welcome email, we need this parental approval email. Maybe you need 2 different welcome emails, one for a member and a child member, and one for the parent. If that's what they mean by categories, then I think we're on the same page, and we just need to get through discussing those, which is part of the SRS.
Right.
So I think, I think I'm in line with you. We just need to make sure that these guys are in alignment with us as well and kind of understand what our needs are.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to some of the future scope things, but there are some things we have to push back on that kind of are part of the scope, or if they're out of scope or something that they didn't really estimate. I mean, it's hard to say what they gave an estimate for,
Right.
Because they didn't have a spec or anything. So they basically threw you a number and said, yeah, we can build you a site for X dollars by a certain time. And, there was no guarantee that that was going to give us everything that we needed or wanted. So that's going to be the challenge, that they're going to say, well, this was a little bit beyond, this is what we can do now, the initial scope, this is what we'll do in the future.
Right.
We just have to make sure that the important things to us are in the initial scope.
Right. I think the easy part of that is if they can incorporate the language that everything on the current site is where we start. We expect everything that's on the current site, and now we're adding on as we redevelop these other things. And obviously change the things like the TNC. And as we add the apps, it's going to adjust a little bit of what we can put into the site itself. But that's all part of adding those apps on. But the original site is what the base is, from where they grow from there. And
Right.
I just think that would save us a lot of bickering later on as to what's in scope and what's not.
Right.
So that's my feeling. All right. So I think that's it. I think that's what I want to get through tomorrow. And I really want to push back on the use of the wireframes they gave us. I thought those are things that we saw 2 months ago. And I would like to see them like really produce wireframes that are specific to the site using the modules that we already have on the UB Universe and the regular Sport Portal sites pages.
Right.
So that is actually surprisingly lackluster, that part of it. And what? I like Ajish. I think he's got it. He seems like a really smart guy.
Yeah, I'm sure his team is good. I mean, they've built some big apps and stuff like that. So I'm sure they have some of the skills. This is going to be the hardest phase of the whole thing.
Yeah.
For them to go and build it's not going to be the hardest part. It's really defining what it is they need to build and making sure that we get what we need. I will probably not be able to provide them with credentials and things tomorrow on the call. I've not ever connected to every single server or system that we have. I think only the web server, which I think is also the database server.
Right.
And I can give them those credentials.
Well, when you talk about that, is that like the MySQL server, or are you talking about AWS?
Yes. Yeah, MySQL.
Okay.
And the that wiki that I've been working from, like there's a lot of obsolete info in there. And I forget offhand, like one of the names of the vendors, but it must have been where, the original UB site was, et cetera. So there are some things that are obsolete. So I don't want to just give them the document as is.
Right.
I'm going to need to go through and kind of filter through it. So I'll commit to giving that stuff to them, by within a day or something. But I want to tell them that and say that I need to go through it. I need to consolidate some of that info, and also let them know that, I don't know if there's some secondary servers that serve as a staging site. I don't know if there's some secondary servers that perform other functions You know, for example, the backup and cron jobs and things like that might run on a different server. So that's something that I need to bring to their attention, because they'll connect to the one server and there's going to be some discovery. They're going to have to look in the configs and things to figure out how, you know, what other servers are being talked to, how are they communicating, etc. But for the most part, the site itself and the database are all on the same server.
Correct.
So
that's correct. There are some call outs to AWS. I think photos and videos or some of that kind of stuff is already up in AWS. Now, I understand AWS has a deal where you get like $100,000 worth of hosting free when you're a new site and you sign up as a new, you know, as a new client. So I don't know.
yeah, even if you have an AWS account now for some stuff,
right?
I think the best thing to do is start with a fresh new account,
right?
And then whatever one exists now goes away.
Right.
All and right. that way there's no legacy configurations, no legacy settings that we're unaware of. We'll get fresh instances of everything, and we'll be able to have them document everything that they've set up. And that's, the other thing that I'm going to want to work closely with their architect is how they configure and set up AWS, because, at some point they're going to go away, 10 years, 6 months, who knows how long. And I want to make sure that environment and the infrastructure is set up the way we want it to be set up.
Right. Agreed. So yeah, and we have to know every single bump and grind they set up. So that's also critical.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're gonna manage the ubsports.com domain in AWS, then there's challenges in how do we set up the mail server and whatever handles ubsports.com mail. Like when I send you mail, Greg at ubsports.com, like where does that go?
Yeah, it goes through GoDaddy.
Is that its own?
Into actually, they just moved over to 365, Microsoft 365 for that.
So it's basically Outlook mail?
Exchange server. Which I don't know if it's different, but they call
What's
it. That? Also through Microsoft.
Yeah, so I mean, that's outside the scope of development, but we want to make sure that we kind of get a handle on the enterprise level management of that domain.
Right.
Because your website and everything is going to be up in AWS, but your mail server is going to be somewhere else. And at some point, you're going to be big enough where you need to start giving people email addresses.
Yeah, actually, I was just pricing that out with I was just pricing that out with GoDaddy and finding out how much it would cost. It's not that expensive. It's like $35 per person for 2 years. So it's not that bad. And yeah, I was just working that out 2 hours ago.
Good.
Yeah, so that's the next step is to, when we get a little bit larger, is to start really bringing everything home, put it in UB Sports.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because we'll want to, they're not going to take it under their wing to make sure that the DNS entries and what servers and everything are all in sync. They're not really going to give two shits about your email server.
Right.
Right. And they're not going to manage your DNS for you. They're going to say, this is what we need you to put in the DNS for our stuff in AWS to work. And that's that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have to do it. And we're going to want to make sure that it fits what we want,
right.
For the long term.
Right. Okay.
That'll come up eventually.
It should.
So.
Right. It should come up. But right now we're using.
Anyway, so that's the credentials and stuff. And I don't know when they're going to want to get on that server to look through the code and everything else.
Well, they're asking for
I'll Yeah, so I'll tell them it'll take me a couple hours to go through it. They'll have it by Tuesday,
All right, that's cool.
you know, or maybe by tomorrow night, so they'll have it on their Tuesday morning.
Right. That's really what they care about. All right.
So, okay.
Cool.
All right, good. I'll talk to you in the morning then.
Okay, up, man. Talk to you then. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Ciao.